Howdy, all you delicious people! I'm here to review Night Patrol 2026. I had gone on at one point had seen the Frank Grillo Werewolves movie, and when looking at that movie with its modern take of a werewolf kind of changing of things, and it's kind of like Purge Night with werewolves in it, and to see that action-packed film was like, okay, how are we going to go on and do something like that, but with vampires or other things of that nature? And I feel that Night Patrol is kind of the answer to that. We have cops, we have gang members, and we have vampires. And in all honesty, when it does get to the vampire stuff, not much of the vampire stuff is really quite defined of how to definitively kill these things. Really, like, when we do even get to the vampire stuff, like, a lot of things start to get very sloppy in this film, in all brutal honesty. And by the time that we even end the film, the ending is to just go on and just be this cliffhanger of a thing. So that is kind of disappointing. So for me, my biggest selling point was the vampire stuff. And I honestly just didn't like that part of the film. The one thing that I was really sold on, I didn't like. So that is to go on and say a lot about this movie, I feel. Night Patrol does have its moments, though. There are certain things that there's some line deliveries that I really liked. There were parts of the story that I think were very smart and creative at moments. And I liked how we even had the gang members that were talking about the changeling or the shapeshifter. And I was like, oh, okay, so these guys are actually smart. They're not just these dumb gang members that don't know about nothing. And when they're trying to figure out how to kill the vampires in the film, that also is just kind of really interesting. How they're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So we make our way into this movie, and we find Justin Long's character. We come to find out that he is to kind of be playing like kind of two sides of the sword in this movie. He's not only going on and eventually going to become the kind of the formidable bad guy in this film, but he's also kind of a victim. And there's like this back and forth struggle with this character, which makes the movie really interesting. We come to find out that vampires in this film have like a hive mind going on, and we have this character called Sarge, who it seems is to be kind of really controlling over these vampires in a way, as well as also mainly focusing on Justin Long's character Hayworth. So we also go on and we have Wazzy. Wazzy is to go on and lose a number of family members and close people to him within this film, which leads him on to go on and talk to these gang members, these Crips, and reveal his knowledge of what happened with that. And that then forces this story to come to a head where we have these gang members against the Night Patrol. And then that battle ensues, as well as a number of other people getting collaterally damaged in the crosshairs of it all. And having this big, huge buildup of event, which is eventually leading to our finale, to our finishing up, to our cliffhanger ending, which ends up kind of getting disappointing. So I'm to go on and look at this movie, And I feel that it very much reminds me of stuff besides like the werewolves film. It reminds me of the movie Attack of the Block. It reminds me of the Dave Bautista Bushwick movie, except for without any kind of real supernatural element. It's just kind of like people against people in that movie. But to my mind, it kind of just feels similar. And its approach of just focus and what have you in that film. Then I'll throw in the vampire movie that is to be Near Dark. This movie goes on and focuses a lot on the new recruit character being tied into this family and they going on and going from town to town in random places and creating all this chaos and all this havoc and murdering and killing people horrifically, and to eventually see how that all plays out with Bill Paxton's character wearing those sunglasses and having that whole story that he was to go on and or to go on and have that performance that he puts on at that bar, which is great. So I think very much Near Dark and Night Patrol like feel very similar in the way that it's kind of just done and put together. Other than that, I think there may have gone on and might have been maybe one more thing that I probably could have tied this movie to say similar to. Maybe a little bit of like Lost Boys in some way, where we have the main guy who goes on and he finds the Keither Sutherlands and or the Heather Sutherlands or whatever, and he finds all those collections of all those guys, and eventually he kind of becomes one of them, and then eventually becomes a vampire, and yeah, so uh, it's quasi similar to Lost Boys. So now let me go on and give you my overall grading of this film and how I really felt about it. So I was to feel just kind of let down about the whole vampire thing. And so feasibly I would go on to say that I would overall probably have a grading if I really didn't get anything out of this movie. Other than some moments here and there. If I probably have not already gone on and forgotten quite a bit of this movie already, even though I'm going to have to re-explain it all to you, yeah, it's going to be forgettable fairly quickly. Just because of it not being anything worth of standout of anything. Um, and that is just so heartbreaking to me that I'm not going to care about this film after I've seen it. Um, it was just a thing to watch. And that just kind of sucks. Uh, because there was not enough of anything there. It just wasn't. So also, if I haven't said already, like it was kind of interesting to see Justin Long's character kind of conflicted the way he was, because I would go on to look at him being on the Goosebumps show, and eventually he would be playing this character that is kind of possessed, and you're kind of conflicted with that character because you hate about how evil he is, but then also you realize that like a spirit is possessing this guy and there's conflict there, uh, and it was kind of really interesting to see that show play out. So if you guys had never gone on seen the early seasons of Goosebumps, that show when it got rebooted, then I would definitely tell people to check that out at least. But anyways, so with that said, my overall grading of this movie is really hard for me to go on and actually thumbs up this film. I even have a problem actually just saying that this movie is fine. I do. Um, Normally, I would just try to figure out some way of thumbing up a film, but I just have really a problem with Night Patrol doing so. Um, I feel that at some points there is also just a lot of filler going on in this movie, and it's just really not entertaining enough. It just really isn't. Um, like it would have to better be catered to an audience of people liking cop films than it is people that are to go on and like vampire movies. So it is what it is with that specific film. As well as also there's just certain elements about this movie where we just have like the Sarge character who's just going off on these like profound rants of things, and I'm just like, okay, like where Justin Long's character is like, why are you saying all that stuff? Yeah, why does he have to say all of that? But anyways, yeah. So, and this is sad because I wanted to thumbs up another CM Punk movie, but this one just is not it. Sadly enough. So with that said, let's go on and let's thoroughly break down this movie scene for scene, blow for blow. Because, I think it's about that time to get into spoiler time. Spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about the time I'm going to spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about Night Patrol. If you had checked it out yourself, maybe you went into a theater, maybe you're to go on and eventually find out that there is an app that you can dare in fact watch this movie right here and now for absolutely free to see this movie without having to going into a theater to see it, just in case you want your own opinion upon it, and I will go on and give you an app, hopefully, to be able to do so. There is an app called Kleed Plus, Klede Plus, that you can check out this movie right then and there for absolutely free. I think that is to be the most available option for you to go on and watch this movie, as well as also there could be a number of other bootleg options, but I think that those could be kind of harder to suggest. Um, so if you were to be a mobile device user and you have a Google Play Store, hopefully you'll be able to type in the words Cleat Plus and be able to find this app and be able to watch this movie for absolutely free. And then go on to possibly think if you want to go on and rewatch it in theaters because maybe you really liked it, or also to have this be a one and done if you're just wanting to watch this film. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to pause this here so I can whip out my cast list or whatever is to be the insisting thing to help me try to break this down movie more. So, or break down this movie better. So, let's pause this here and let me break down this film. All right. So, in the very beginning here, we have Wazzy, who is to be in an interrogation room with Captain Freeman. We seemingly have Captain Freeman that is trying to give Wazzy this piece of paper for him to sign, assuming it's to be a confession. I would naturally assess. So Freeman is trying to give this guy a paper for him to sign, but it seems that Wazzy is to have a injury of sorts. He's to have something stabbed into his chest, which eventually we'll come to find is a Zulu weapon that eventually had gotten mistakenly lodged into his chest while he was fighting with the vampire character that is to be Hayward, which is to be by the end of this piece. So, as Freeman is trying to get this guy to sign these papers, eventually we'll cut to the whole starting of this story. And I'm just like, okay, all right, like it doesn't even say like how many days ago this was. Like we're just too led to assume that I'm like, okay, so this is the starting of the story. And yeah, so normally any other movie would go on and tell you like, hey, sometime in the past or some kind of X number of days ago of occurrence of, but yeah, this movie just goes on and just cuts right to this, to where we have to just make some assessments here. So I probably should have said this somewhere in spoilers or in non-spoiler, that people should really look at the thing that is to be of Wozzy's bike, because it'll say a name on it that eventually will be important later on. And ends up seeing Crypt Boy. Wozzy starts biking, making his way to a girl with a car, and her name is Primo. I think they end up calling it a number of different things, like Prier or Primo or something. Like, I'm just gonna keep calling it calling her Primo, because feasibly I think that's the only thing that it actually says on IMDb, and it's an easier way to just break down this movie, anyways. So, Wozzy and Primo get into this car, and I want to say that there is probably a significance of reasoning why that these two characters are to be here together, as if maybe to be something more than just like, okay, this character's going to get killed, but it never really gets there. So Primo goes on and is to look at Wozzy and says, "Hey, what's good?" And he's like, and like the two of them have this spat, but eventually both of them start making out. It seems that they're going to go on and get even further and further, even more intimate. And we have Wozzy that goes on and whips out this ring to give to Primo. Wozzy is to say that his mother was to have had this ring, and there's something very unique about it. And so here's where there is to be cops that just appear out of nowhere. And we would have, of course, Marcus, who's played by CM Punk here. And we also have another one of the Night Patrolmen, who also, I believe, has an actual name in this film, who is to actually be, I think, Chad. I'm probably wrong about that. Anyways, I'm going to say Chad anyways, and probably be wrong. So, to be safe, I'll just say Marcus and Night Patrol member. So Marcus goes on to have Primo get out of the car, eventually shakes her down and pats her down. They come to find there's a weapon, a gun in the vehicle. And then eventually Justin Long's character Hayworth gets out of the car. So we're kind of not exactly sure why everything is going on the way it's going on. Because also, like, a lot of these people in this cop car, they don't have like dress blues on. Like, they are just wearing just sweatshirts, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, why all these people don't exactly look like cops? But so the next thing we see is Hayworth come in, and he goes on to take the gun from Marcus and is to take it and then shoot Primo, because he has to kind of win these guys over so that way he can get into Night Patrol. And then when he goes on and turns the gun on Wozzy, Wozzy runs away. The I guess, fourth man, I guess, that we have here, who I believe is Tommy, or I'll call him Hood because it'll sound cool. Um, Hood goes on and chases after Wazzy. And what happens here is Wazzy is to still have this ring with him. And when Hood finally gets to Wazzy and this ring starts to glow, for some odd reason, Hoodie can't pull the trigger. Hood can't go on and kill this guy. He is to just be thrusted to run away from the fear of this ring. And so this ring has some witchcraft power to it that is to be kind of warding off evil spirits, and I guess Tom is to be the effect of this. Which I really want to like this idea, like, but then also when you kind of look at it, there are several times where they go on and they do these kind of certain things that are to supposedly like ward off evil spirits here. They eventually get the whole like tower things that they end up getting all put together, and they spend so much time on that in the movie for the night patrol just to just kick those aside and and they just push on through. So it's like, what was the point of setting all those up when feasibly, like, it has no effect on the night patrol, and you also have no idea what of any of the effect that any of this stuff really has. But if anything, let's get back to the film here. So we start off with chapter 1, LAPD. So we have at a school auditorium here, we have Hayworth coming in, stating that he's always ever wanted to be a cop. And he always thought it was the coolest thing. And he can understand that cops probably right now in modern society probably don't have the best reputation and everything of those means. And that also there's a reason why they have cops into the world as music is start to play. All of a sudden, we have this gang member coming in, and he ends up having this gun in hand. All of a sudden, he ends up blasting away, and I'm like, holy like, what the heck is going on? But I'm like, well, there has to be some kind of goofy kind of thing where all of this is planned. There's no way that this is just some, like, it's to be like the whole scared straight thing all over again. So we have this gang member coming in, and all these people start to think that this is some crazy event going on. They're cowering all over the place. And we come to find out that the gang member is none other than Xavier. That he is to be the other cop that is to go on and be partnered up with, of course, Hayworth here. So Xavier goes on and finds one of the guys and grabs him from off the crowd and has him bend over on all fours and puts his thumb in his mouth and tells him to do all this weird, goofy, almost like sexual thing. And then eventually, Hayworth is like, okay, like, I think we've had enough here. I think we've done enough. So, cut to Xavier switching back into his dress blues and his and back into his cop uniform, and Hayworth is telling Xavier, like, man, you had gone on and just fired blanks into that auditorium. Like, man, they're probably really going to go on and really ream you for that. And Xavier kind of fluffs it off as like, well, but hey, we really uh, sent a message to those guys to not become criminals. So it was like a mission accomplished. He was trying to send a message, hoping that they will take it in. So so both Hayworth and Xavier, they get in the car and they start driving. Xavier consistently goes on and is to say to Hayworth, he keeps calling him sir, and Hayworth is kind of getting annoyed by that, saying like, hey, I hate that you're so formal, calling me sir. And here's where Xavier starts ribbing him about like, well, hey, yeah, like you were in special ops, like kind of giving us background to this character. And so I guess like he should be kind of used to being called sir because of that. And so we start to also get cuts of them kind of doing like normal day to day, just kind of catching criminals, running after criminals, and eventually finding out more about these characters. To come to find out that Xavier uh, was to also uh, have a little bit of criminal background as well. But like most of the focus is here on is on Hayworth's character. So we make our way to have these characters go to this this food tent, and Hayworth turns to Xavier. It's like, hey, are you starting to get sick of this tent? Or how many times we have to go to it just because it's cheap food? So they go there, and Hayworth is going on and speaking Spanish to the guys, and Hayworth is consistently making jokes and saying that, hey, yeah, like this guy really loves rat meat and jizz in his food and all kinds of other horrible things. So, and eventually Xavier says, hey, I can speak Spanish, motherfucker. But anyways, Xavier goes on and he orders his food, and the two of them both pull away. And Xavier mentions how he wanted more salsa. It's like, man, why couldn't they gone on and give me more salsa? So Hayworth has to go back and eventually uh, talk to the guys about getting him more salsa. But before that, Hayworth goes on and talks to Xavier about the whole like, hey, yeah, I know there was a situation I was involved in last night where there was a guy with a bike who is named Crip Boy. Like, do you know anything of that? Like, does that name kind of ring a bell to you? Uh, and so Hayworth is asking Xavier about this to see if, um, from any of his connections, that there's to be a possibility that he knows this nickname or knows this person. And so Xavier goes on and says, like, well, yeah, the name sounds familiar because the name of Crip Boy is to actually be the nickname of his brother. So of course he'll know who this is. So, but he doesn't want to reveal that to Hayworth right away, Xavier is going to go on and call his brother later and ask him about this. Like, well, hey, like, I have my partner asking me about this. Like, hey, like, what problems have you gotten yourself into? So, and he'll be, I guess, doing that shortly. So Xavier goes on and calls his brother, and so Wazzy tells Xavier that he doesn't really have much time to talk to him because basically he's still on the run. Really, he's gonna go on and figure out some people where he can try to figure out a safe place to kind of lay low. Because really, at this point, he's probably thinking that at any moment, like cops are coming after him. So right now, Wazzy is trying to figure out what his next step is, as well as also kind of leaving Xavier in the dark for the time being. So Wazzy makes his way nearby the Crips hangout because he's going to go on and tell them before he tells the cops what he had gone on and what he had seen. So Wazzy goes on and he bings this this cage, and he ends up getting a mask over his head for his troubles. To be thrusted into this room where he is to be whipped off this this thing over his head to find these guys asking him whether if he is human or not, or if he is Wazzy or not. They go on and they continue to ask him, like, if he's a changeling, is he a shapeshifter? And so here's where we have Bourne that comes in, the guy with the gun with the laser pointer. I think he ends up just calling him Bourne here, but his name is actually Bornelius or something like that in the credits. But I think they also call him Bourne as a nickname. So Wazzy is to reveal to Bourne here that his sister is dead and bring him to where his sister had died. So that way, Wazzy will build up some trust with these guys, so that way they will go on and they will protect him. And so Wazzy will go on to explain to these guys that the Night Patrol had gone on to kill Primo and they had done it. So to again earn some trust with these men. So they also had this like this device, this it looked like a metal detector, but it actually was to be a device that was to see if this person was to be a vampire or not, which I thought was interesting. So so come to find out, they make their way to Primo's body, and it's all like chewed up with like limbs lost out of it, and they're almost wanting to say that like an animal did it or something like that, but we know better. So And they were coming up with all other kinds of reasons. They were seeing like lizard men and everything in between besides actual like vampires. And I think that was kind of rather interesting because that honestly just shows that these characters are to actually just kind of have some kind of like they're willing at least to not rule things out. To where you know how in so many other like movies we would go on to immediately just like, well, a bear got to her, and like they would write off as that as like, oh, there's some cougar in town. Like these guys are going on and they're thinking of anything possible, like lizard men, instead of just vampires and shapeshifters and what. So I honestly liked that about this movie, compared to so many other things. So they go on and they over Primo's body. They end up putting these like sticks over her, so that way it goes on and cannot put bad juju on this whole environment, or eventually hope that Primo will have a good afterlife if they go on and they put these sticks over her. So the next thing we see is both Xavier and both Hayworth at this uh, at this bar or at this club, and they're playing pool. So uh, it is kind of funny how Xavier is kind of busting Hayworth's chops here, and telling him it's like, well, hey, uh, like, hey, you can act normal here, and like you can act like a human being here, and whoops, let me pause for a second. And Xavier tells Hayworth that he needs to act house trained, and like saying that he needs to act more proper and what have you. And Hayworth tells him, dude, it's a bar. It's a bar. So they go on and they start talking about them possibly getting involved in a task force. And then eventually a third party person comes in that eventually will end up being the new partner for Xavier in this film. And he will go on and spill the beans to Xavier that Hayworth is moving on and he's getting promoted uh, to the night patrol. So, and this third party guy, I have no idea what his actual name is, but eventually he will at some point be a character that will be partnered up with Xavier. I don't know what his name is, so I'm probably just going to state that his name is going to be Officer, just so that we can figure out a way to somewhere down the road see who he is later on. So when I just say Officer, it'll be this guy because I have no idea what this guy is. He's the bald guy with the mustache. So after Officer goes on and leaves, uh, Xavier is to go on and be happy that uh, that Hayworth is to go on and to have finally gotten to Night Patrol. But also, Xavier does kind of turn around and is to also kind of be upset later on that why is it that Hayworth got it but he didn't, and is to just kind of be confused uh, of what he needs to do to just be able to improve like this guy did. And eventually he goes to Freeman and is to just kind of ask this question as he's kind of giving him donuts. He's like, dude, I'm diabetic. But anyways, so we cut to Wazzy here. Wazzy makes his way to his home and to his mother, Ayada, Ayonda, Ayonda. I'm probably gonna butcher that name, so my apologies right out of the gate. So Wazzy makes his way to his home, and we find out that it's like, man, this place is like fortified. This place has like a barbed wire cage in front of it. This place has like cameras all around it. And we find out that that is why it's set up to be there for, is because Ayonda is to be kind of very paranoid because of her realizing that vampires exist, and also uh, we'll come to find out what had happened to Wazzy's father by the later part of this film. Uh, that ties into Ayonda. But so Wazzy goes into his home and eventually is to pull away this desk for this hole in the wall, hoping that he's going to get money from out of it. And instead, he finds this note that says, "My house, my money." And so Wazzy is to go on and realize it's like, oh, like, I guess I'm not going to be able to go on and get enough money to figure out a way to get out of here. So he's just kind of stuck. So Yonda is to ask Wazzy where he's been, and eventually also notice that Wazzy has her ring and is to be curious about who he had shown this ring off to. So Wazzy goes on to explain to his mother about Primo and how also the police had rolled up on them and that they had shot her. So Wazzy is revealing everything to his mother. He's giving her the absolute truth. And I am surprised. I really am. Because I'm like, man, like, you're confessing everything to this woman. So Yonda is to realize that the gang task force is to probably to be involved in all of this. So and they asked if Wazzy, and so she asked if Wazzy was seen and how dangerous Wazzy is in his situation, as well as also the fear that'll come with, like, well, hey, not only are you gonna get killed, but probably also is Ayonda for just probably even just having Wazzy here, as well as also just uh any number of other like things like Wazzy talking to anybody could probably lead to any number of these night patrolmen all going after them. So, plus also Yonda is to say that that basically Wazzy's in the exact same shoes as his former father was. That eventually Wazzy's father had gotten caught up in the night patrol also, and eventually it led to his death. We'll eventually get a reveal that Yonda herself had to go on and had to kill Wazzy's father. I think because he ended up becoming a vampire himself. So that was to go on and be the definitive reason for why he was killed. So the next chapter is to be chapter 2 of Night Patrol. We all of a sudden go on to have a guy who's all of a sudden playing video games, and one of the night patrolmen appear here and to say, "Oh, hey, yeah, you like playing video games? So does my friend." All of a sudden, Hood just comes out of the shadows here, pops this guy, and then walks off. Like, what the heck? Come to find out, the first guy that they had killed was a gang member, and then they follow up with finding another guy and another red shirt, similar to the guy who was playing the video game, and they kill him too. They find him in the streets, they gun him down, and one of the night patrolmen goes on and sticks his finger in one of the bullet holes and starts taking the blood and starts consuming it. Marcus, CM Punk's character, tells the other night patrolman to save it for the hunt. So Hayworth and Xavier are to now go on here and are to see like some kind of just can off the distance. And so they're firing off their guns and then just trying to shoot it, which I'm like, isn't that kind of dangerous? But whatever, I guess just blowing off steam here. So the key thing of this scene here is for them to kind of reveal more stuff about themselves. And here's where Hayworth explains the real reason for him wanting to go into the night patrol is to possibly figure out whatever happened to his father. Because Hayworth is to go on and find out that his father was a part of the night patrol, and Hayworth's father had died. And Hayworth wants to figure out, okay, why did that happen? Is the night patrol somehow responsible? He has to go on and try to hope that if he gets in the night patrol, he can figure that out. And so also Xavier is to say to Hayworth, like, since now that he's in the night patrol, that he should be sticking his chest out, he should be a lot more confident, and that he should be like really happy and everything like that he was to go on and to have gotten this. And they make about the whole joke about like getting hard and stuff like that. So and that they're with the big boys now, or that Hayworth is in the big boys now. That they're in the gangster task force and everything like that. So here's also where Xavier goes on and uh, he talks about his family. Xavier is to mention how he had gone on to witness his mother killing his father right in front of him, and that they were arguing at the time. And he has no clue what they were even arguing about. And it still haunts him to this day that he was to, of course, go on and to have seen all that, as well as also Wazzy, who is probably too young to remember any of it because he was probably just a baby at the time. And that his mother is to be involved in some mystical bullshit. So that sets up who Xavier's mother is, who's a Yonda, who, if we didn't figure out, yeah, like, that is to be his mother. And eventually ties into the relationship of Wazzy to him, Xavier. So, and then this is where we get where Hayworth is talking about his own father. So, here's where Marcus comes in, and he re-explains to Hayworth, it's like, well, hey, you're part of the night patrol now. Don't you know that we work nights? And so Hayworth and Xavier just kind of hug it out, and Hayworth is going on and telling Xavier that he's just going to try and earn their trust. But if anything, like, these two characters are going to try to be like the best of friends. Um, and Hayworth is not going to try and turn against um, his former partner so easily, with the exclusion of at some point when he is to probably turn into a vampire and he just has some desperate needs that are to be uncontrolled. Because, man, eventually, when there is that thing between Hayworth and Xavier that does happen in the later part of the film, spoilers, but Hayworth goes on and meets up with Xavier, and we just have Hayworth that just is falling apart at this point. He's barfing and puking, and is to be just so fighting back and forth, like he doesn't know what he's doing anymore, and he just wants to stop doing whatever he's doing, and he's so bloodthirsty to the point of when he goes on and he sees Xavier, all he's seeing in front of him is it's just another meal. So Hayworth goes on to rip out Xavier's throat or Xavier's neck and just starts consuming him and then kills him right then and there. So I thought, I was like, oh my god. Like, Hayworth just goes on and kills Xavier in this movie. And I was like, man, you would like that their friendship could have been stronger than Hayworth's thirst, but I guess we would just be wrong. So Also, Hayworth just goes through so many people. I mean, literally through them, like tearing through their bodies, um, and chopping off their heads and all kinds of things in this film. So Xavier gives Hayworth the whole "Hey, yeah, watch yourself out there, partner," as Hayworth leaves. So Hayworth goes in the car with Marcus. And I honestly think that this scene was like, I'm kind of happy that we have this scene because I was hoping that we would get a scene with CM Punk and Justin Long together somewhere in this film. So it would make a lot of sense. Plus, also, I was just kind of happy to see these kind of two both in the scene together. But, anyways, so it is kind of interesting how Marcus like sees Hayworth as like, well, yeah, I don't really trust you, and like, and I wasn't think to go on and have you in Night Patrol, but Sarge is to go on and feel very differently, so that's why you're even here. Marcus goes on to also talk about certain missions uh, that Hayworth was in, where he was to be in certain special ops missions, where eventually he had gone on to chop off a number of people's heads. So maybe in the past, Hayworth would go on to be in the military, and he would go on to be like a vampire hunter, possibly in the military. We don't know. That whole story wasn't exactly uh, put forth in the story. Honestly, if they were to go on and maybe do a prequel thing here where they would have Justin Long in the military and he would go on to do like a military vampire story, like I think that that would be rather interesting, like a kind of a different spin on things. But I don't think they were going on and gonna do Night Patrol and do all these kind of weird, goofy ideas with vampires and whatever. It could be really fun, but like I just don't think that that's really going to happen. It would be cool, but it's not. Yeah, it would. I don't think that that's going to happen. So we would go on to have Marcus that is going to give, of course, Hayworth a mission here. Marcus goes on to explain to Hayworth that a he has a bike of Crip Boys that he wants Hayworth to return to Crip Boy because they figured out who he was. And Marcus also hands Hayworth a gun, assuming that he's going to use it when he sees Wazzy. So Hayworth makes his way to Ayana's home, and Ayana is seeing this guy come in through all of these security cameras. She grabs his gun, puts it near this dresser, hides it, and then answers the door. There's an interesting moment where Hayworth asks if he can come in, and Ayana says, "Well, if you can," which is kind of an interesting thing. So she doesn't exactly invite him in, but he comes in anyways because he's still human. So Hayworth goes on to hope that he could speak with Wazzy. And conveniently, Wazzy is here. So Wazzy does come on down, and you're thinking here, it's like, okay, so Hayworth is going to go on and he's going to kill these people here, right here and right in this house. But instead, Hayworth goes on to eventually do something different. Wozzy goes down to meet face to face with Hayworth and immediately flashes of the past where Hayworth had gone on to kill Primo, knowing who this guy was. And so the next thing we see here is Hayworth going on and pointing with his fingers, having a gun motion. And it's telling Wozzy, hey, I brought your bike back. You obviously were in a place that you should not have been. And so I always want to go on and bring this bike back to you so you can use it when you need to, because you will need to, and you will use it. So and so as Justin goes on and explains all this, I'm just like, all right, so he's not going to go on and he's not going to kill this guy. He's just warning him and like, hey, don't tell anybody about what I did, basically. Kind of leave this very hush hush, and I'll leave you alive. And I'll let you use your bike. Code word for I'll let you live. So after that, Hayworth goes back into the car with Marcus, and Hayworth tells Marcus that Wozzy wasn't there, and so they drive off, which is like, man, that's smart. That's really smart. So the next thing we have is this kind of just phone call that's going on in the background as Marcus and both Hayworth are driving to this kind of hangar, this kind of bunker, this kind of abandoned place. So Marcus is calling Sarge, explaining that Hayworth, it seems to be suited and booted up, and he's seemingly ready for whatever they need him to do, but he has no idea what he's really in for. And so Hayworth goes on to meet up with all the other Night Patrol guys, and then eventually he is to go on and also meet up with Sarge, not knowing who this guy is whatsoever. And so once it gets revealed to Hayworth, who is Ethan, I forgot about that, because in IMDb it just says Hayworth. But yeah, but they do call him Ethan. His father does, because his father is Sarge. When it's revealed to Ethan that his father is alive, Ethan starts losing it. Hayworth goes on to say to his father, Sarge, is like, hey, I thought you were dead. And like he starts to get emotional. At some points, he's like, he's hugging his father, but then also he's just very upset. So Hayworth is also assuming that maybe Marcus had drugged him, that maybe he's seeing this, that maybe like there's something wrong going on, that this really isn't him. And his father is there to convince him, no, I am your father, and I really am here. Even though, again, the way that this guy's acting is kind of unusual for his father. So eventually, this is to all come ahead here. And the main focus is that Sarge is going to go on and cut open his arm and force Ethan to drink his blood, having him become one of the Night Patrol, having him become one of the vampires. After all this kind of runaround dialogue of Hayworth trying to figure things out. So shortly thereafter, having Sarge feeding Hayworth his blood, he goes on and whips out his gun and shoots into him. I'm like, holy crap, you just killed this guy. So the next thing we see is Xavier going into the police department with a box full of donuts. Xavier goes in and finds a picture of Sarge or Hayfield's father, and so Xavier takes a picture of him. So here's where Xavier goes on and finds Freeman, Captain Freeman, and is to go on and explain to him about why is it that he isn't in Night Patrol right now. Like, what does he need to do? As well as also Freeman kind of complaining. It's like, hey, you brought me donuts, and I'm diabetic, and there's the whole stunt that he pulled at the school. Like, he's still kind of upset with that. So Freeman is to go on and say, it's like, well, hey, you got a future in this department, you got a new partner, so if anything, just go on and just go over and meet him and go out on patrol. So the next thing we see is Xavier with this now new other officer. So they make their route, they make their day, and it's kind of funny how this officer is going on and talking about all this like sexual stuff and so the next thing we cut to is Wazzy, and Wazzy has this music kind of tuned up too loud to the point where Iana is kind of annoyed and she wants the music to be shut off. That is like, seriously, I have to listen to this music now too. So Iana wants Wazzy to go on and do some chores for her, and Wazzy is now forced to hand out all these pamphlets to all these people near the neighborhood. And eventually, once he goes on and does so, he starts to get ragged on because the people are going on and mentioning how this guy has to go on and do all these chores. And there are seemingly people around the neighborhood who knows exactly what Wazzy is supposed to do. So we now cut to Wazzy, who's to make a phone call to Xavier, explaining to him that he was a witness to a murder. And he is doing this all while Ayana is watching him do this whole conversation. So that has Xavier and his partner realize, like, okay, we're going to go on and we're going to bring Wazzy in and eventually have him be an eyewitness to all this. And so we have Xavier's partner that goes on to have gotten a sandwich from this seemingly same meal tent. And as he starts eating it, he really hates the sandwich, or he uh, has a problem with the sandwich. And Xavier goes on like, well, yeah, I remember my first sandwich here. Yeah, what a problem that was. So now Xavier goes on and meets up with Marcus. He goes on to want to try to win some brownie points with Night Patrol. So he figures what he should do is say that he has a witness to a murder, so that way he can go on and hope that Marcus will go on and give him brownie points. And it is kind of interesting, the interaction between both Xavier and Marcus, because Xavier goes on to mention how he used to be in like in a certain area of this or he used to mention that he used to be, of course, from this exact precinct, and Marcus has to bring it up and like, well, yeah, this is the building that we're standing in. Like, yes, I know what you're saying here. So Marcus goes on to tell Xavier that what he's going to eventually have to go on and do is basically arrest his own brother. And Marcus ends up asking Xavier, "Are you willing to arrest your own brother?" And Xavier is like, "Well, like I arrest criminals." And so Marcus goes on and says, like, "Well, hey, yeah, you go do that. You go arrest criminals. Do something to win me over, and then you'll probably have gotten more of my attention." So, cut to now Xavier and his partner to make his way to what I believe is this. I want to say it looks like a diner or a deli or something. And Xavier, and partner with gun in hand, has made their way to this place where Xavier and Ayana are there to talk to Wazzy, and Ayana are here to talk to Xavier. So Ayana talks to Xavier here instead of Wazzy stepping up. So Ayana wanted Xavier to be here because Ayana was hoping that Xavier would go on and work with her because of them being technically family. So, hoping that Xavier would probably work against Night Patrol. And so, but if anything, there are at certain points where Ayana sees Xavier as also just kind of a pig still. So, Ayana is also hoping that if she goes on and kills a cop, that is to be kind of like a signal to the Night Patrol that like the war is on. That if they had gone on and killed Primo, now in turn, uh, we'd have Ayana here that kills Xavier's partner, and then goes on and beats up Xavier in equal measure. But of course, he's not going to be killed. He's just going to be the one that is going to be sending off the message. So, and that's what transpires next here. So, Ayana goes on with Wazi to put up all of these uh, mystical barriers all over the place, or witchcraftian structures and sort that are to maybe possibly be a barrier of sorts, or is to ward off evil spirits. And while that's going on, we also have Wazi that calls up whoever is left of his gang members and tells them that there is going to be a war coming and that they need to kind of get all of their bells and whistles, all of their big guns, and make their way here because it's going to be a fight between them and, of course, the Night Patrol. So we get to see this whole kind of thing of all these guys getting these like handheld weapons as well as also this axe, which I never see them use again, or even see at any point of them having that. We also had Bornelius that has this like this explosives on his chest, which I was like, okay, that looks like an interesting thing to have, like a bulletproof vest that also has a bomb on it. Okay, so cut to Sarge with all of the Night Patrol going on and explaining about how this is going to be a hunt, that there's going to be no mercy, that there's no witnesses, and they're all doing this for Ethan, who is to be now a new member of theirs. So Ethan is now laying on the ground, seemingly supposedly dead, and the Sarge is going on and telling Ethan to rise, giving him the metal fangs and saying all of this stuff that is to be very religious and images of God and all these kinds of other things. We'll all of a sudden go on to start seeing that that Hayworth is just kind of floating above the ground bizarrely. This kind of reminds me of, I think, like the Gladiator Russell Crowe thing, where all of a sudden he's just kind of floating from the ground. While that's going on, we have the Night Patrolman, even Marcus, above Ethan, and they're going on and they're like snorting off of a blade of blood, and they're talking about the hunt, and they're saying that they want to go on and get the best out of this because like this tends to rarely happen. And also I think the last time that they probably had something like this was like a riot or some kind of that. So the next chapter, chapter 3, is to be the courts. So the courts is to be a location. So also that's kind of interesting to call the place that Ayana is going in, that Diana lives at, to be called the courts, because I think that's kind of rather interesting because we have feasibly like cops in the courts, so judgment and justice and what have you. So the next thing we see here is the Crips making their way to Ayana, as well as also Marcus going on and giving his kind of speech here to kind of prepare all the guys for their night. So we have Borneus and his men meet up with Ayanda, And they realize that there's going to be a war here. There's going to be a battle. And so trying to figure out how to set this up here. We see that Xavier ends up awakening from his beating, and so he starts to get up. I think his ribs are probably injured. That's what it kind of looks like. Xavier makes his way to his cop car, and he calls for what is to have happened, calls for his code, and then leaves. Xavier goes on to get some weaponry and gets out of his car, to all of a sudden to be met by Hayworth, and he's to be shocked that his partner is there. So both Xavier and Hayworth make their way to eventually a Yonda's place, the courts, as all of Night Patrol is starting to go on and do this hunt. Here's where we bizarrely have to go on and go all through these random people's houses, and you can't clearly see what's going on, as if they're doing this with night vision goggles, and it looks weird. Or not even that, like, it's just this, like, weird, like, you see people, but they're all in white and with gray backgrounds. So it's kind of like this weird night vision thing that doesn't quite make any sense. I'm like, did they do this scene just like off of a computer or what? Like, did they actually do it and then they decided to just make this change afterwards? Like, I'm so confused of why they made this choice. It doesn't make sense to me. So we have the Night Patrol busting through this home, and they kill some people, and then they siphon off others to eventually be a part of this container that is to be a container of blood. So that way they can have a large container of blood, so that way they can go on and have something to take from after they've killed all these people as a keepsake. So the vampires can go on and get their blood. And it's kind of like, so, like, it doesn't really matter what type of blood it is, it just matters that they have a lot of it. Like, you would think that, like, wouldn't that really change or hurt the blood at some point, that it's just a mixture of just all blood? I guess it really doesn't matter, because when you think about it, like, how many vampire, like, it's not like they're specifically going after a certain blood type either. But I don't know, that's just me just kind of thinking of uh of how specific vampires maybe should be, but aren't at all. Anyways, here is also where we start to see some night patrolmen all start to wrangle up some people in a cage for them to eventually be killed off later. We also see that Marcus is to go on with his silver fangs and just kind of thrust into the camera scene, showcasing that people are getting killed here. So now we have the courts where Xavier and Hayworth are making their way there. And Hayworth is struggling. He's starting to vomit. And he's mentioning that he can't. And Xavier is like, hey, partner. And Hayworth is like, hey, I can't handle it. I thought I could. So eventually, we'd come to find that Sarge is whispering sweet nothings to Ethan's ear, and he's really having a tough time not feeding into that figuratively. So to where it seems that Sarge's having quite a bit of control over Ethan because he's basically the newest guy sired. What I mean by sired is when you go on and you have a vampire who goes and creates a brand new one, there is kind of a lingering connection there. And there's a number of different ways that has been played out in other things. Like we would find in John Carpenter's Vampire that the newest vampire would have a kind of mental connection with the man vampire that had kind of created her. And eventually, James Woods' character figures out a way to track that other vampire down by using this girl. But that's not what happens in this movie. So, here's where Hayworth loses control and kills Xavier here. Hugs him, but then goes on and grabs his neck and rips a chunk of it out, having Xavier fall over, and Hayworth's mouth now has just blood coming out of it. And continues to drink more blood out of Xavier, draining him dry. Hayworth stands back up and meets face to face with Wazzy. The next thing we see is Hayworth getting gunned down by the Crips. And really, realistically, that doesn't really do anything. Bornelius and his men make their way back to Wazzy, and then Wazzy notices that that Hayworth had just gotten back up. Eventually, they try to go on and gun him down further, but what good does that really do? The next thing we see is Marcus with the caged civilians, and here's where he goes on and he has that whole thing about that these people are on the heel of America's boot, and that these people are all here to just be scraped off. Marcus goes on and grabs one of the rando people, takes them, cuts their throat, and mentions about how since this guy had fear before he died, tasting his blood was kind of like buttermilk. So the next thing we see is another night patrolman, and he's putting all these other people into this this fence, this cage. Here's my question: like, where exactly did all these cages just come from? But on top of that, like, I guess we just have to just be like, well, whatever for this movie, right? So as this night patrolman goes on to put these people into this cage, we all of a sudden have Hayworth meeting the night patrolman, grabbing him, throwing him to the ground, and the night patrolman goes on and says, "Hey man, same team, same team." And yeah, not the same team, because Hayworth just starts to go through and tears through this guy, starts ripping out all of his organs out, and kills him in that fashion, just tears through this guy's body. And I was like, man, this is pretty cool. But then also it's like, okay, like, so Hayworth at this point is just thrashing through all these people, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's just like, whatever, like, this guy just doesn't care. Like, it doesn't really seem that Hayworth has this whole good and evil thing. He's just trying to find the next body, it seems. So The next thing we see here is the crypts. So this is Borneus, his men, and Wazi with him, and they're making their way back to Ayana. And Ayana is dealing with her own mess. She's dealing with Marcus. She has this big, huge gun. She's blasting away at Marcus here. And here's where things really start to really just get really interesting. So at one point, Ayana is blasting into Marcus so much that Marcus now has a hole in his head that is to be completely rehealing, and continuing to have him try to get to Ayana any way that he can. So Marcus then turns to realize that Borneus and Wazi are there, and so he starts attacking him. He finds that there is one guy that has a cross and has a gun on him, and Marcus goes on and he stabs one of the Crip and kills him. And then Marcus turns on all the other gang members and starts taking them all out, knocking them out and taking them down. So, and Ayana is screaming in the off in the distance like Wazi, Wazi, because she realized that her son could get killed here. The next thing we see is Wazi waking up next to Borneus, and Marcus is there, and they're in some location where people are getting their throats cut, and blood is being, I think, siphoned off of them. Either that or they're just getting drained and whoever, or whatever. So, Wazi ends up getting awakened by Borneus, who is letting him know that he has a knife that Wazi needs to get to so they can get out of here, so they can cut themselves free. So, while that's going on and Wazi is trying to get to this knife, and Marcus is coming into frame here, we all of a sudden have behind Marcus, here enters Hayworth. So we now have the showdown between Hayworth and Marcus here. So here's the sad thing about this movie, though. I realized that one of these two characters, they now have to die. And I don't want CM Punk to get killed here, but I also am just like, well, but Hayworth has to kind of die has to not die also, because it's kind of hard to kind of place my bets here. So but I like the exchange here. So Marcus goes on and he is saying to Hayworth, it's like, yeah, since you're a special ops guy, yeah, I guess we're gonna see how good you really are. And Marcus says, like, hey, Sergeant, if you're in there, like I hope you're watching. So Hayworth and Marcus duke it out here, and I'm like, yeah, this is basically like King Kong versus Godzilla, even though it's like vampire versus vampire. I'm like, all right, let's see this battle. But like the battle was so brief because if anything, we're focusing more on Wazi and we're focusing more on Borneus, and they're escaping, and then all of a sudden we see all these people that are all in these cages and trying to get them free, and that takes up more of the focus. So Hayworth goes on to take down Marcus, and he rips out his throat and then he drinks him. and that definitively kills Marcus here. We'll go on and also see that Hayworth will have ripped out Marcus's head, and the next time we'll see him, Hayworth will have Marcus's head and will basically show that he's basically like the new head of the Night Patrol. That he's basically going to go on and be the leader of all this. Plus, also, Sarge kind of takes control of Nathan at the later part of this movie, so feasibly, Sarge just goes on and is to kind of retake over when Hayworth is kind of waning at some point in this movie. So, because what we see next is this. So once there seems to be some people in the cages all start to get released by Borneus and Wazzy, we just start to see everybody running all over the place. There is at one point where Hayworth bumps into Hood, the Tommy Hood guy. And there is at one point where Hayworth is going to go on and try to kill Tommy Hood, one of the Night Patrolmen, but he ends up getting stopped. He ends up getting stopped by his father, Sarge, because Sarge is kind of starting to take control of Hayworth here. So, Sarge is trying to reason with Hayworth and is trying to get him to much more focus on the fact that he needs to go on and he needs to drink. He needs to take this woman, cut her throat, and then drink her. Tommy Hood will grab this random woman and place her for then Tommy to then take a drink out of her. Hayworth has somehow a blade in his hand coming from I don't know where, but he has one. And so Hayworth decides instead of going on and cutting this girl's throat, he takes the blade and he puts it next to Tommy Hood's and he gets stopped. So Sarge controlling Hayworth's mind tells him it's like, well, hey, if you won't go on and if you won't basically play ball here, metaphorically, I'm paraphrasing, that in turn, then Sarge is going to go on and cut Ethan's own throat to show him like how to get things done. Ethan falls into the ground and starts drinking blood. The next thing we see is Wazzy, who is now at his brother Xavier's body. Wait. Let's pedal back here for a second. No. Let me get this right. So, Yonda is at Xavier's body, and she's mourning his loss, while Wazzy and Borneus are making their way back to Xavier's body with Yonda there. So we have Hayworth running rampant here, and eventually Wazzy is to see Hayworth off in the distance to find that Hayworth is going to get a stake in the back. Done by Borneus because he's like, well, yeah, like I'm getting revenge on Primo because you killed my sister. Assuming that that is going to be the definitive way to kill this guy off. And so Hayworth is to fall over and is to supposedly have died here, but that's not what's going to happen. Hayworth is going to go on and just break the stake and then just continue to keep on going at some point, but not anytime soon. So they assume that the stake to the chest thing is really what works because they absolutely have no real idea of what will. They're going on and they're whipping out the pamphlet and trying to reread it to think that there could be any real answers there, and they're trying to figure this out. So Borneus is trying to read this pamphlet and is trying to figure things out, and they're talking about leprosy and all kinds of things. So but if anything, if they can't definitively figure out a way to kill these things, they assume that probably sunlight will be able to go on and kill them. They hope. So, because we push on here, we have Wazzy who has this. I think he has a shovel, and he breaks it in half. And he's like, well, "Yeah, maybe the stake to the heart thing will go on and be the definitive thing to kill these things." And they're realizing that that is actually a big mistake because it's like, man, you know how close we have to be to have that always work. Also, Iana is to say that she has a bit of weapons that will be able to help them in this situation because she has this whole box that has these weapons that they could use. So we push on here, and so Hayworth is to go on and break his stake that's in his chest and then continue on going here. Hayworth goes on to find the container of blood that they're siphoning off all these people. And at some point, he goes on and opens up the container and starts drinking from it. So Wazzy, Aya, and Born make their way through the streets and go on to find that there is to be someone who is to be taken out by a vampire. And so Wazzy goes on and takes his stake and starts beating up this vampire and killing him. But like he just keeps on just doing whatever he can to just kill this thing and hope that it works. Because again, they still haven't quite figured it out yet. So we're getting ever so closer back to Yandea's place, and there's a moment where there's so many vampires nearby that Bourne makes a sacrifice play. He goes on to realize that Wazzy and Ayana need to keep running, while Bourne is going to go on and use his bomb to create some distance from these vampires to Wazzy and Ayanda. So he takes the bomb that's on his vest and he lets it go off. He detonates it. And then the next thing we see here is a scene that looks honestly very stupid, in my opinion. So we have Wazzy and we have Ayanda, and they're running here. And it looks so dumb. Because we can obviously see that they're running in place, and it looks stupid. Not only that, like how we're consistently seeing them getting like slashes or whatever goofy thing that is going on here just looks so stupid. It just does. This scene should have completely gotten cut off from this movie because it's the dumbest thing in this entire film. So Wazzy and Ayanda make their way back to the apartment, And because of all those weird slashes or cuts or whatever things that they were to be given, but which I would assume would be from the vampires, because I have no idea what was really going on there. It was to just be like, okay, can the vampires like run so much faster than normal people, and like that's what happened there? I have no idea, because again, there's no definitive thing of what these vampires can do. They left it so murky and so misunderstood that the vampires can just do any number of things. Yeah, that's the problem of this movie. So Tommy Hood is to go on and say that even if sunlight is going to happen soon, or dawn is going to happen soon, that isn't going to be the thing that is going to stop these guys from continuing on what they need to do. We just have Tommy Hood, who throws on a poncho to really just say here that they're going to be able to go on and still take these characters down here. So we have the night patrol that start to go on and start to torch the apartment complex that Ayana and Wazi are in. And so Ayana and Wazi are kind of having this heart-to-heart moment as Hayworth is coming in with Marcus's head, and we come to find that Marcus is at this point completely controlled by Sarge here, as all the other Night Patrol guys are in their ponchos, with the exclusion of Hayworth not being in his, because I guess we figure that he doesn't need a poncho. So Sarge is to mention that he is Sarge under Ethan here, and explaining about the deal that he had with Ayana, and so this is to be revealed to Wazi what had happened to his father. And so we have Ayana that explained to Wazi about the whole crate thing for him to go on and need to get it. And so Wazi goes on and does so. He opens up this box. He's hoping, like, man, this is a big, huge box. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of good weapons here. So he opens up the box, and it's all this African tribal gear here. And he realizes that these weapons are not going to be substantial enough to be a good enough thing to face off against these night patrolmen. So he realizes that at this point, he's like, dude, I'm freaking screwed here. So Wazi closes this stuff back up, and he's like, dude, there's no way I'm going to be able to fight these guys off with weapons like this. It's impossible. But Wazi goes on to realize, like, well, fuck it. Like, there's nothing else I can do at this point. There's only so long that he can hide out for. So Wazi goes out in all of this tribal gear and faces off against the night patrolman. Hayworth drops like a sack of potatoes, and he goes to his knees, and he's pleading with Wazi that he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, he just ate a girl's brains, and he's desperately asking for Wazi to just help him. So Wazi says to, like, Heyman, it's like, well, hey, you were the one that killed my girl. You killed everyone that I loved, and everything like that. So here's where Sarge goes on and takes control and starts facing off against Wazi, breaking off his weaponry, grabbing Wazi by the neck, and all of a sudden both uh, Hayworth and both Wozzy starts floating in the air, because at some point they present here that vampires could even fly, and I guess it needs to be said here that I guess Hayworth can fly. So, as well as also Hayworth kind of has like that Blade 2 mouth going on, where all of a sudden like his mouth can completely open. But maybe that is to, of course, be from the fact of what happened to his mouth earlier. I have no idea. So either way, it just looks weird. So both Wozzy and Hayward are now flying several feet above the air here. And there is at one point where Wozzy still has a weapon on him that he is to go on and try to attack uh, Hayworth with, which eventually has them both go dropping down to the ground. So the next thing we see is Wozzy back in the interrogation room, and he's talking to Freeman, going on and saying like, okay, let's try this again. Like, I'm gonna have you sign this paper again. So when Wozzy starts talking about vampires being in the Night Patrol, vampires being in the LAPD, Freeman goes on and says, yeah, I know that already. Like, I know all about that. Because eventually, Freeman will go on and tell Wozzy, you know what, I don't care about black and white. All I care about is blue. Like, I care about my police officers. That's all I give a about. So, if vampires would be policemen, then he doesn't care who they are. He doesn't care about race. He doesn't care about anything. So Freeman has Wozzy come with him to this room and has him go into this underground, almost like tunnel, where eventually all the vampires can hide out, because of course this is now daybreak. So Wozzy has this thing lodged into his chest, which is to be a weapon. And so we have Wozzy that goes into this area and meets face to face with Sarge. And Sarge mentions how he's going to break every one of Wozzy's bones and then drink his marrow. And eventually this is to all lead to Wozzy going on and ripping out the weapon that is in his stomach and stabbing it into Sarge's throat, supposedly killing him, but you don't really know. And then also, Wozzy starts to see all these vampires surrounding him, and that's what kind of wraps up this film and gets us out of here with feasibly us having to assume that if they wanted to do a sequel, that Wozzy could probably go on and become the hero of the sequel thing, or also Wozzy could have been killed here because he's been outnumbered logically, and there's no way for him to survive an onslaught like this. So, kind of leaving it open ended to eventually hope that there's going to be a trailer or a sequel out of this. But I would honestly doubt that, because it just doesn't make sense for there to actually be a sequel to exactly this film. But I've been surprised how they would go on and make so many sequels of so many projects. Uh, yeah, with that said, I really kind of condensed this one, and I probably didn't go into the huge amount of detail because I really wanted to rush through this and just wanted to get this done. Because I was to just, like, based on my grading and based on my feeling of this movie and based on also probably people not really going to probably care about this specific review, yeah, that's kind of how I was to just try to approach this one, which was like, okay, let's just kind of get this one done. Also, I wanted to get this one done because I was kind of getting a little bit tired because it was to, of course, do this way later than I probably should have. So this will be uploaded. Thank goodness. I'll have a video out, so that'll be good. So thank you for watching this. I appreciate anybody going on and checking this out. I didn't see it all in any kind of feature reviews because I feel that most of the time I've kind of been repeating the same kind of titles over and over again, and eventually those titles don't come out. I haven't done those yet. As far as future reviews, the only thing that kind of sticks out to me is something new to say that I've probably said in other things. Is probably Spice World is probably going to eventually be a thing that I'm going to review at some point on this channel. Even though that's a very weird thing to probably review, I don't care. I'm just reviewing a bunch of just to see if anything sticks. So at this point, whatever is to go on and hopefully be a thing that people will probably care about and probably click into, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Plus, also, there are certain projects that are really just because I wanted to do them selfishly, so that'll probably hurt me in the long run. But also, there's also been a number of projects that I've honestly just wanted to do that are just miraculously also just trending or somehow people are being to be interested in having me talk about these things right now. So that's good. Uh, I want to go on and say that I'm probably going to go on and continue doing the physical media stuff, the comic book hauls, and the movie physical media stuff, the DVDs and Blu-rays and whatever. I'm hoping to continue those, but also I think the main reason why I was to kind of be hesitant about doing more of the comic book haul stuff was clearly just because recently I've had some health issues in my body that were to go on and just have me not have the strength well enough to try to grab any more of these boxes and continue on these videos. So I was just kind of very hesitant about what I physically could do to get these things. So I apologize for not being able to do that. Then I'm sure a lot of people are like, yeah, we're loving these comic book videos, or maybe people are just finding them or whatever, and people want more of them. And I get that. I'm just trying to I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna be able to continue to do that. Just kind of based on hoping that day to day I'll get physically better and I'll get be able to have the ability to kind of do these kind of videos further because I know people may enjoy them based on what I can eventually present to you from stuff that I can pull out. So with that said, I'm gonna get that out of here so I can get this video uploaded so that we can be at least under 2 hours. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for however long you were going to watch this for, because some people tend to watch these briefly and some people watch them at a certain point, and that is be great because eventually I that always just tells me that it justifies that I can just keep doing this, and that's good enough for me. So thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.